We're a little past 5:15, so I believe we have everyone here. So I will call the meeting to order. This is a work session, the March 11th work session to be specific. We have one item of business tonight. It is DRH 25-00378 with at 2521 West Victory Road by Moneric Architecture. Believe we can start with Caitlin.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This is a public work session for DRH 25378 to satisfy conditions of approval to construct a new multifamily residential development with 300 units in 15 buildings with a clubhouse and resident amenities on property in an R3 DA residential urban with a development agreement zone. The project is located at 2521 West Victory Road on the south side of Victory and east of Vista Avenue. At the February 11th, 2026 design review hearing, the Commission approved the project subject to a future work session to review materiality and colors. The applicant has provided an updated color palette and clubhouse materials that they will present to you tonight. Additionally, they have physical color samples as requested by the Commission. The planning team recommends approval subject to the original conditions in the February 11th project report and the updated materials presented at the work session tonight. And with that, we can turn it over to the applicant team to present.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Sam McAllister. I'm the development manager at Roundhouse, the developer on this project. First, like to say that we appreciate all the feedback that we got during the last month's design review hearing. Appreciate the commission's thoughtful feedback on that. We've taken that, reflected on it the past month. Have worked with Moneric, our architect, on those changes and are excited to present those to you here tonight. I think just a quick recap on top of what Caitlin mentioned. This is 300 unit market rate multifamily project. Building typology is all 3-story between 12 and 24 units per building. And then we've got a central clubhouse. The site has a public road on the east and then multi-use pathways on the south, west, and then Victory Roads being improved on the north. I think what we heard last month was that generally positive feedback on our site plan, how the buildings were oriented, how we were activating public road, and kind of connecting to that. And so you'll see here tonight, we haven't made any changes to the overall site plan, which I think was in alignment with the feedback we received. And then the two items that we did want to revise based on the feedback we received were one, the apartment building color palette. So we've got those samples here today, paint drawdowns in addition to the Luna wood, which is a thermally modified wood that you've seen on the buildings. And then the second was materiality on the clubhouse. Specifically, this seemed to be mostly on kind of that ground plane that sits back from the soffit there, and how that material, we had like a stone last time, was interacting with the buildings. And so we've changed that materiality. I'll let Doug talk about that and explain it a little bit more, but we're happy with the results there. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Doug and we'll pass out some samples.
Almost covered me, 95%. Got me there. Well, thanks for having us back. I'm Doug Moneric, as a reminder. Do you want me to pass this around? So yeah, the wood sample there is thermally modified. Just to recap, we really like that product. It doesn't require staining. You essentially seal the edges, and it's an incredibly durable product. and it also weathers really nicely. So through a wood, the stucco product, sort of a warm tone gray, works with the color palette. And then the other three are the range of materials for the apartments. The apartments also have, oh, sorry. The apartments also have, well, that's way better. There's a couple apartments that are the thermally modified as well, and then the thermally modified shows up on the clubhouse. This little diagram kind of speaks to the distribution of colors. There's a range, as we're required to have different building types in this type of development. So there's a range of both color distribution, and the number 2 there are the flat roofed ones with the Luna wood. So that's what you're seeing getting passed around. Obviously, sun, shade, shadow all impact it. That's why in the renderings, you're going to see sometimes they look brighter. Sometimes they look darker. So it's nice to have those. We test everything on the buildings before they actually go up to get it actually dialed in correctly. And then the materiality Sam spoke to, did a wander around your wonderful downtown. I think one thing we're really trying to do is in this example, a bank is obviously a bank, a house is obviously a house. So not sort of confuse the two as you come around the corner, in that you're going into a community gathering space versus a private residence or a place to sleep. So the materiality, the form, there's an echo to that flat roofed apartment in the background, but it also definitely wants to feel like a place where you're going to go. There's offices, there's workout. It's distinctly different. So it's a place to gather, not a place to sleep. And then the update to the stucco and the Luna wood, which then trickles to the Luna wood in the background. And that is our quick update to colors and materials. Thanks so much. Look forward to feedback.
Thank you. Is there anyone present, or obviously not present here, but anyone online that would have any, well, actually, sorry. Any questions from the commission? No.
Mr. Chair, actually one question.
Mr. Gesser.
In the original design, I think it showed it was either a stone or a tile for the building. Would you be, and we'll have further discussion, but would you be opposed to using that same type of material with a finish, like the stucco finish that's being proposed? Like, I guess, would you object to using either or?
Excuse me. Can you come and speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, I think it's a different enough construction type where the proposed is just the stucco over traditional framing.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's what's being proposed.
So to clarify, your preference would be to stick with the stucco rather than
Correct.
doing a whatever
A block.
matte finish
Yeah, sandstone.
sandstone.
Yeah,
Okay.
so stucco.
I think Commissioner Gesrick was asking if maybe like a thin set tile application would be something that you'd entertain.
No, I'd rather the stucco, both from the durability and the constructability of it. Those products just get, to do them right, just get too, the cost just doesn't pencil on a project like this. So we need to stick with stucco.
And is this sample indicative of like the finish style itself?
Yeah, what we would want to do is a smooth coat, hard troweled, a little bit of skip versus like a texture or something.
Right.
So interior would be equivalent to like a Venetian plaster coat. It will carry to the inside. So on the outside, that sample is just as close as we could get to, the color for this, the purposes of this, but texture wise too. We would spec a hard trowel.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing no others and not really having any public to testify, I think we can close this up and move to any sort of deliberation or entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gesser.
I like the improvement of at least the color palette on the communal gathering space. I think it allows the wood to kind of shine, and I think the more neutral materiality of the field of the lower portion of that community center, I think kind of just allows it to fade back, and let the wood be the focal point. And then also I think it jives better with the overall aesthetic of the whole development. I agree with what you're saying. It'd be nice. I think Commissioner Erstad mentioned that he did like the materiality. I do like the materiality. If there was an option to use, like tile or stone, I think that would add to the longevity of the building. But I understand what you're saying from the economical perspective. I don't know that, for a building like this, I don't know that it's super critical to have that durable of a material. It's not like in that core of downtown. It's in a more residential setting. And so I think I do like the refined finish of it being more of like a smooth finish rather than that fine kind of ephes finish that, it collects dust and it collects cobwebs. I think this will do a better job holding up over time. Yeah, thank you for providing all the material samples. That's helpful in evaluating it.
I would echo that. I think we appreciate the refinement of the materiality and understanding more, getting to see in person the paint drawdowns and understand how they interact. I think the concern about an all white paint on some of these apartment units has been pretty well allayed with the moving to a very light but still colored approach. And I am excited to see this texture on the stucco. I think that we don't see a lot of the hard trowel smooth finish around here. I hope to go do what every other weird architect does and go hug a building. So I would entertain a motion, though I cannot make it.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Semple.
I would move to approve DRH 25-00378. The work session, or based on the work set. Oh, thank you. Subject to the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended conditions contained in the February 11th, 2026 project report with the updated materials presented at the March 11th, 2026 work session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Christine, would you please call the roll?
Semple,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
Gesrick,
Aye.
Aronson. All in favor, motion carries.
All right. The next order of business would be an agenda review.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We have, I believe, 4 items today. Number 1 is DRH 2616, 860 Sherwood Street, which is to construct a new mixed-use development to be constructed in 2 phases with 90 residential units, office space, a daycare facility, and a commercial space on property in MX5 zone. Staff is recommending approval, and it looks like we are going to hear this today. The next item, number 2, is DRH 268 at 1250 Gowan Road to construct an approximately 55,560 Sorry, it's been a long day.
Numbers.
56,700 square foot aircraft hangar with accessory office and service shop space and associated site improvements on property in an I-1 zone. And this one is eligible for consent. The third item is DRH 25-374 at 415 Maple Grove Road. This is to construct a 25,000 square foot addition to an existing industrial building and a new 26,700 square foot industrial building on property in an I-1 zone. This is recommended for approval and eligible for consent. And the last item today is DRH 25-440 on 11880 Overland Road to construct a new multifamily development with 138 residential units and 2 buildings on property in an R3 zone. Staff is recommending deferral, and that is not eligible for consent today. It sounds like the applicant has some items they'd like to discuss.
Jesse, would you just clarify on number 4, that recommendation of deferral, is that because the applicant is not fully prepared, or is that the applicant believes themselves fully prepared but has conditions that they don't agree with, and we think it'll take a lot more time to iron those out?
Staff is recommending deferral to the next hearing. There's a couple items that are unresolved at this point in time. I think the applicant would like to maybe get some feedback potentially, or just have that discussion with the commission.
Okay, so we will hear it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will be recusing myself from that item where technically my firm is the applicant and I'm the landscape architect of record.
Thank you, Mr. Semple. I think that concludes our agenda review, and we may now be adjourned unless anyone has anything they'd like to say.
Mr. Chair, I'll be
Commissioner Hager.
deferring from item number 2.
Thank
Or
you.
I'm not deferring, recusing myself.
Anyone else? Any more conflicts of interest? All right. We'll see everyone back here at 6. Thank you. It is now 6 o'clock. We'll call to order this March 11th Design Review Commission hearing. Christina, would you call the roll, please?
Semple,
Here,
Marsh, Aguilar,
Here.
Erstad,
Here.
Gesrick,
Here.
Aronson,
Here.
5 present, 1 absent. Or-
Thank you.
Yes.
Jesse, would you like to begin with our introduction?
Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Design Review Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There's a chat function in Zoom, and this is not a part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person and then those who signed up in the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We're strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jesse. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. Any decision tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it is important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. I would now entertain a motion on the minutes from last month's meeting, February 11th, 2026, for both the work session and the commission public hearing.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Aguilar,
I'd like to make a motion to approve Design Review Commission work session minutes dated February 11th, 2026, and Design Review Commission meeting minutes dated February 11th, 2026.
so moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Christina, would you call the vote?
Simple,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad.
Aye.
Gesrick.
Aye.
Aronson.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
We have two items eligible for the consent agenda tonight. The first is item DRH 26-00008 at 1250 West Gowan Road. It is an approximately 56,700 square foot aircraft hangar with accessory office and service shop space and associated site improvements on property in an I-1 zone. Is the applicant present? Do you agree with all conditions of approval? Is anyone here from the neighborhood association? Any public present or online wishing to testify against? Seeing none, that has been added to our consent agenda. The second item up for consent consideration is DRH 25-00374 at 415 North Maple Grove Road. It is a 25,000 square foot addition to an existing industrial building and a new roughly 26,700 square foot industrial building on property in an I-1 zone. Is the applicant present? And do you agree with all conditions of approval? Is there anyone here to testify against? Also moved to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Semple.
I would move approval of the consent agenda consisting of item 2 DRH 26-00008 and item 3 DRH 25-00374, subject to the terms and conditions of the staff reports.
The motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gesrick. Any discussion? Seeing none, Christina, would you call the vote?
Simple,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Abstain.
Erstad.
Aye.
Gesrick,
Aye.
Aronson.
Aye.
4 in favor, 1 abstained, motion carries.
All right, that brings us back to item 1, DRH 26-00016 at 860 West Sherwood Street. It is for a new mixed-use development to be constructed in 2 phases with 90 residential units, office space, a daycare facility, and commercial space on property in an MX5 zone. Caitlin, take us away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This property is located within the Lusk neighborhood in downtown. It is bordered by Island Avenue on the north, Lusk Street on the west, and Sherwood Street on the south. Surrounding uses include multifamily and various commercial businesses. The proposed development is a 90-unit permanent supportive housing development, which is proposed to be phased. Phase 1 will consist of the daycare, support services, and resident amenities, parking, and 48 residential units. Phase 2 on the south side of the property will consist of micro retail units along Lusk Street, podium parking, and 42 residential units constructed above. A recommended condition of approval requires design review application for the future second phase, which is anticipated to be constructed in 2028. Although no parking is required in the MX5 zone, the applicant is providing approximately 54 parking spaces on the site. The applicant will also construct the streetscapes with street trees along Sherwood, Lusk, and Island in accordance with the Lusk Street Area Master Plan. Along Lusk and Island, the majority of the frontage includes active uses with windows and a raised walkway to provide street activation. At the planning and zoning hearing on Monday, the project received approval to deviate from the 80% active use requirement for the MX5 zone. In order to provide the on-site parking and accommodate the vehicle access points, the frontages include active uses for approximately 64%. To mitigate the lack of active uses along the parking along Sherwood, the applicant is proposing changeable art panels that allow art to be switched out while also providing screening of the parking. The building massing is similar to other recently developed buildings in the surrounding area. The facades include articulation features to comply with the design review guidelines, including facade modulation, window patterning, and material variation. The ground floor is comprised of durable materials, including concrete and brick. The applicant team has done a good job of incorporating many competing requirements of the floodplain design guidelines and the building programming. The planning team recommends approval subject to the recommended conditions in the project report, and I can stand for any questions or we can turn it over to the applicant team.
Thank you, Caitlin. Does anyone have questions for staff? I would just have a clarifying question on the parking. I know it's not required within the MX5 zone, but there is a snippet within the code that says it must any parking provided must conform with the city standard. That only references the actual design standard. It does not reference the parking ratio standard, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, correct. If you are providing parking when it's not required, there's not a certain ratio of parking that we require.
Okay, so it literally could be 2 stalls and still meet that. Thank you. And then I would also ask that the floodplain considerations, is that what has set the floor, the finished floor elevation on the first floor? And is that right at it, or is it like at 200-year flood levels? Like what is setting that elevation?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that minimum elevation required is the 2 feet above base flood elevation required in our code.
Thank you. No further questions from me, and seeing none else, I think it's the applicant's turn.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is John Vance. I'm with Northwest Real Estate Capital Corp. We are based in Boise. Our address is 210 West Mallard Drive, Suite A in Boise, Idaho. I'm joined by the architects from Shopworks of Denver, and just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the project. What's that? That one? It's not working. Just this arrow right here. Yeah, just keep going.
I can change the slides. Oh,
That wasn't what I wanted.
my end.
That's all of them, except for this one. So if you want to just go ahead and
Yeah.
advance the slide, yeah,
Sure.
that'd be great. Thank you. So go ahead and advance it. Run. The Sherwood is being developed by ourselves, Northwest Real Estate Capital Corp. Just to give you a little background on us, we're a 501c3 owner, developer, and manager of affordable housing. We operate in 8 different Western states. The Sherwood will be our 42nd affordable housing project, developed since 2015, and will be our 2nd permanent supportive housing project, joining Valor Point out on State Street. The architects that we have selected for this is Shopworks Architecture. Shopworks is a nationally recognized leader in trauma-informed design, creating spaces that promote healing, dignity, and safety by utilizing a user-focused design framework. They have published numerous articles and research papers and books on the benefits of trauma-informed design, the dignified design on tenant outcomes and property performance. Thank you. The existing condition of the site, we have 2 older cinder block buildings that were built back in the 70s. that are currently sitting basically right at the floodplain level or about 6 inches below. The initial plan was to renovate those 48 units and add community space to make the project work. However, after working through the flood issues with FEMA, they decided that we were not able to put residential uses at all on the first floor, even though it was an existing condition. And so that basically took away a total of 16 of the 48 units. And by the time we looked at trying to replace those units and all the other iterations we had to do on the commercial space, it was pretty much the same price as doing a new building at that same location. The benefit of doing that is that we're going to do the 48 units originally thought, plus with phase 2, we can add another 42 units for a total of 90 units. The design challenges for this space with the new one, as was mentioned, the floodplain requirements for this space and throughout Lusk Street District. The other thing is the lack of alley access, which was more in line with what we did with planning and zoning, getting the CUP for not meeting the 80% requirement for active use. But then also the Lusk Street design criteria that we have that we need to meet as a new construction project in the Lusk Street area. After the neighborhood meeting, or during the neighborhood meeting, the neighbors had pointed out a couple of requirements that they would like to add. The first iteration of our building was had a lot less on the frontage at the street level. It was more that we had only areas raised up where it met doorways, and the rest was at the ground level. So we had kind of a 2 or 3 foot cement block at the bottom of our building that was not attractive, and they asked us to address that with something that was a little more user friendly. And then also they wanted to see retail options on Lusk Street. All the users that we have right now the users we had in the first iteration were the daycare, the supportive services, and then the residential amenities. Our first iteration of phase 2 was going to be a podium parking, which would have included basically from Lusk Street all the way back to the back of our property with a podium parking structure. But after meeting with the neighborhood, we decided to add retail units to front onto Lusk Street and provide a little more activation for Lusk Street and add a retail option for smaller retail vendors. And so that's kind of where we've gotten to at this point. As I mentioned before, it's a 90-unit mixed-use development in Lusk District, built in 2 phases. As mentioned earlier, the first phase will feature the 48 units of housing above a daycare, the supportive service spaces, and the residential amenities. There will be a small courtyard that allows the children at the facility to have somewhere to play. And then the units are all 2 and 3 bedroom units. And this project is specifically designed for families exiting homelessness. And that's why the supportive service area will feature Catch and Terry Riley as our supportive service partners. And then phase 2, as I noted, the ground floor, the retail facing out onto Lusk Street, and then the podium parking behind. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Rieko Ishiwata from Shopworks to go through some more of the design criteria.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Rieko Ishiwara with Shopworks Architecture. We are from Denver, Colorado. Next slide, please. So this is kind of like a site context. You do see at the upper kind of left corner picture, that is the Sherwood Street. The one on the left side is our existing building. The opposite side is the new student housing. So when you see the site plan, it's kind of hard to kind of orient, but the building form will be very similar to what this building looks like. So we have a parking lot on level 1 with screening kind of facing that on the opposite side of parking. And it's kind of hard to see. The picture at the bottom is the across from Island, where they're going to have 2 kind of big U-shaped building. It's going to be, looks like 6-story, have a parking lot. So so we kind of got sandwiched by between two big buildings, and we are only 4-story high. So next, please. We just want to show some landscape inside of building where the John mentioned that we're gonna have a nice courtyard for families, and it's gated, so it's secure for both resident and the people surround. Let's see. We also have a kind of trash enclosure in the back, and we also providing a private kind of drive to go the trash truck and the fire truck to go through. So, or even though we don't have an alley there, we are providing some access to the street. Next, please. You've seen this slide too, but this is the view of Rusk Street. So the Rebel 1, we have a kind of a strong base design. That's where we have a kind of patio-like walk. We picture that to be used by family, business people, daycare. They just kind of like have their own private porch. And the building on the kind of like right side, that's the phase 2. And it's a little bit hard to see, but we have a sky bridge connecting to phase. Next slide, please. This is the view on the Sherwood Street. So the bottom part, that's where we have a parking, but we have like a nice kind of art screen that looks like a parking lot. And then this side of the building will be a phase 2. So next. It's a little bit lighter here. We do have a brick or some masonry type material on Rebel 1, just to kind of enhance the pedestrian experience. Also, it's kind of give a strong base. And the upper floor, we are proposing cementitious siding. So it's the color, we can pick any color we want. We want it to be somewhat neutral, but have a little bit of pop to it, and some signage. And then you see a lot of a street landscape, benches, bike amenity, to kind of try to enhance that Rusk Street experience. And that's kind of what we have. This is the view from northeast corner. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Semple?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask about, I was looking at the site plan and I think I'm clarified a little bit. The courtyard area that is meant, you're keeping that secure because it's also being used for the daycare use, right?
Correct. The
Okay.
daycare will share some of that space. It's kind of the blue and purple areas
Yeah.
primarily for the daycare, but it can also be used by the residents as well.
I guess I was thinking that it seemed kind of disconnected a little bit from the exterior, but understanding kind of the use of it a little bit more helped me. I just wanted to kind of clarify that. some more.
Okay.
So thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
Could we go to the southern facade of phase 2? So on this image, it shows these kind of horizontal pieces at the top, kind of between the parapets. Is that accurate? Is that a modeling issue?
That's for the bedrooms, right? The secondary. So those are articulations in the building. There's the way these are designed. One of the bedrooms kind of sits a little bit off the outside wall. And so that is where the window access is for that second bedroom. So
Okay.
it drops back
I guess I'm
8 feet.
speaking, I understand the idea of articulating the facade and stepping it back. I'm speaking specifically to, you can kind of see the shadow cast there, and the mouse is hovering over it on the screen right now. Those horizontal elements that are going between each articulation, is that intended to be there? Is that a modeling remnant that made it into the renderings?
I think I see it. We can do like a little bit of band, accent, but yeah, what's missing in the rendering is actually we have a window there.
Setback
Mhm.
in that, the 8 foot deep
Mhm.
recess. Okay, that's great. I'm glad that we have the windows there. I just am not sure if that horizontal piece that kind of runs
Yeah,
across the
little
length of the
massing. Yeah,
facade.
we've been kind of studying the massing a little bit. I think that would with some interest to, architecture.
Okay, so that is intended to be there. It's not
Mhm.
a roof piece. It's not
I know
there's,
it
there's
does
not a
look like
soffit up there at level 4.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, this phase you kind of like try to develop a detail to it, but yes.
Okay.
So there will be an element there between the two. That's more towards the front. than the
Right.
back.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Semple.
this might be for staff. I just wanted to, I think at the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned that the second phase will come back for DR, so we'll get a little bit more detail on this facade and this portion of the building, correct?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, correct. We have a condition in the recommended conditions that says that phase 2 would come back for a DRC major review.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate that clarification. Rendering the last several minutes of conversation moot. Seeing no other questions, I would open it up to the neighborhood association if a representative is here. Seeing none. Any members of the public here to testify tonight that did not sign in? Also seeing none. We'll close the public portion of this hearing and move to discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Semple.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely a unique design for the building. The response to the floodplain issues, I think, probably dictated a lot of that. But I think that the materials look really nice. The form works well for that area. There's a couple other buildings in that area that have that same kind of length, if you will, that lifts it up to get it out of the floodplain. I think the material and color choices are nice. It's nice to see a good mix of uses. I'm glad to see some additional retail along there. I think that'll get used heavily, whether it's by these residents or a lot of the students there. You probably find some really great users for those 3 spaces that'll really get a lot of foot traffic through there. So, and I appreciate the addition of parking, even though you didn't have to put it in there. I think that there's projects that do propose a lot of parking reductions and it sometimes can compromise some livability. We don't look at parking at this commission, but just wanted to point out that I appreciate that.
I agree. I think this is a pretty well thought out, nicely detailed project. I think that yes, the floodplain has dictated a fair amount. I think this neighborhood has some interesting challenges in terms of right-of-way widths and existing infrastructure. And I appreciate the way that you guys have sort of created this arcade almost along the street edge that expands that streetscape environment into the building footprint. I think these sidewalks can get a little claustrophobic down in that area. To that end, I think one change I'd like to see made would be peeling back from that northwest corner, your kind of sidewalk, arcade, elevated platform, and allowing more of that sidewalk under and directly into. I think, you've got a significant chunk of that corner that doesn't actually have any entry points. And so to be able to move the access to that sidewalk, paseo, whatever you want to call it, closer to the actual entry points to the respective doors and allow for a little bit more sort of movement along that street edge. What I'm envisioning would be just removing kind of the upper 50 feet on the west side and 30-ish feet on the north side and allowing the the sidewalk to kind of dead end it, not really dead end, but move to stairs on either end that then allows that corner to be opened up more and you can have a little more movement through. And it feels less like this entire facade is sitting right up against the sidewalk, and it allows a little bit more dynamic motion back and forth. It opens the sidewalk up towards that prominent corner. I think that also helps with just the general access rather than having anyone having to go all the way to the building corner to get to those spaces. It's much more direct from the sidewalk into those spaces. I think that would also help. It creates a little bit more of a dynamic response to the topography there and allows maybe that brick to come down and meet the sidewalk level. And instead of having just kind of these more horizontal bands that you start to see.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gesser?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, I think the only real feed, I love the project. It's great. I also appreciate that you incorporated feedback from the neighborhood meeting, activating that ground floor. It's very, this community, this area of Boise is very vibrant. It's very walkable. And so I think that adds a lot to this project. But I had a similar feeling towards the railing. Just feels, I understand there's that safety component to not wanting people to fall off that, but the length of the railing kind of, and the height of it kind of creates like this barrier, if you will. And so I think if there's a way to soften that, whether, and I don't know how much, I'm looking at this plan, I feel like the renderings showed more space between the railing and that building setback, more than just what would be needed for circulation. But I wonder if there's an opportunity to soften that railing with maybe some like raised planters or something in that. So it's just not this long continuous railing. You might have these kind of like, maybe there's, to Commissioner Erstad's point, maybe there's like steps in there that don't just occur at the ends of the building. Maybe there's a step somewhere in the middle that would soften it, or just adding like a bench area or like a raised landscape portion, just to kind of soften that a little bit and just make it feel a little bit more walkable and not as abrupt.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Aguilar?
Commissioner Gesser, are you talking about the raised sidewalk, or are you talking about the sidewalk at ground level? Because I guess I'm looking at the color renderings in the submittal package. And I guess I don't have any issue with the current design. There's benches and bicycle parking and trees. And I think if you go even further, there we go.
Sorry, yeah, to clarify, the comments were mainly were directed at the raised portion. I think the benches at the street level are really nice, but if you just go back to that previous, yeah. So it kind of feels like that, and I think it's intentional to create, kind of a little bit of a barrier between the sidewalk and the building, but it kind of feels with the concrete columns and the continuous railing, it feels like there is like a bit of a barrier there. And I just wonder if that feels, I feel like that's might be something that you see more in like a really urban area of downtown versus this district it's a little bit more pedestrian oriented. It's a little bit softer. And so I wonder if there's an opportunity to just break up the monotony of that railing along that elevated area.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Aguilar?
Can I get clarification on how wide the sidewalk is at that upper level? So there probably isn't, it sounds like there's not enough room to maybe put like a two-top table, like say in front of the micro retail or where there's some patio type activity, if it's only 6 feet wide.
I think to kind of reiterate, or at least revisit my own point, the the point of maybe reducing the length of that elevated pathway to really just tie the elevation or the entrances on either facade together would also be to kind of minimize the impact of that sort of barrier feel. And sure, it's there at the places where it really needs to be to allow access to each of these locations, but it melts down into the streetscape and kind of disappears in the places where it doesn't need to be because there is no direct building access. I think by reducing the linear footage of some of this, it starts to just it becomes less of an issue. So I don't know if anyone feels strongly about it. I would probably make that a condition of approval. I don't think it's necessarily any additional burden, but I'm not going to write the motion. So,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Aguilar.
what if we saw some, say at a work session, we saw some like that fencing detail, what that looks like, and maybe it's instead of that traditional rail, maybe there's an alternate design that could accommodate the safety aspect of it, but also address some of the concerns that you have.
Again, I don't think my issue is necessarily with the railing itself. It's just more with how long that whole thing is and how it starts to really limit the access to the building to the very ends. But I would not be opposed to seeing something. I mean, you don't get much more economical and safe than a 4-inch spaced vertical bar. But you know, if there were an interesting low cost, get a local artist to do some kind of silhouette forms that you can laser cut out of a sheet metal and apply to the outside of it to create a you know, more visual interest. In a similar vein to the kind of these interchangeable art panels on the south side of phase 2. Again, I don't think it's something that I would necessarily require as far as design elements go. I think reducing the length of that kind of platform sidewalk accomplishes everything that I would like to see.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
would-
Semple.
I mean, so I'm just trying to think of like a motion or an added condition, if you want that to be a condition versus kind of a recommendation that we might see some additional detail at a work session. You know, because if we had a condition that was something like reduce the length of the raised sidewalk to coincide more with the direct building access points, something along those lines, is that open-ended enough for you that you feel like that would direct the
I think that
or
that provides firm enough direction while being, I guess, vague enough to allow the applicant to work within it to their own judgment.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Gesser.
just thinking about this a little bit more and the question that Commissioner Aguilar asked, if there's only, I'm just thinking about this from a technical standpoint. If there is only, so you're saying there's only 6 feet between like that brick frontage that we're seeing there and the railing. There are some potential challenges or implications with extending those steps from the end, because if as soon as they turn the corner, you need a minimum landing when you get to the top of a stair, and so that could potentially be, it could be problematic. I could see where that might be a challenge.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Aguilar.
And I just want to add, I'm making an assumption here, considering the use and especially the daycare portion where the entry to that is on the exterior versus the interior. I would assume that the user of the space, whoever's going to be operating the space, wants to manage that access, especially to the daycare. And even though it's public, probably don't want it too public and to be mindful of the daycare area.
I think that's a valid point, and I don't take issue with that, you know, maybe the sidewalk itself should not extend directly up to the daycare space. I think one way around that would be maybe it's not sidewalk, maybe it's a landscape planter in that space that again breaks up this sort of the feel of this sort of podium wall against the sidewalk, allows the sidewalk to feel more open and more integrated with the building without necessarily allowing people directly up against the daycare.
We see the site plan again. Sorry.
Could someone clarify if that blue says office on it?
Yes, office space.
Is that the supportive services?
Mhm.
Okay. And the daycare itself is in the pinkish, yes. Salmon. And given that is there, you know, there are a lot of doors in that specific stretch there, and the ramp is on the eastern side of that. I would anticipate that keeping its sidewalk podium. I'm mostly just thinking of, you know, peel it back from the northwest corner and allow that corner to open up a little more as it is at the intersection. It would continue, again, you'd have the same buffer effect from the daycare. You'd still keep that barrier in place. Having said all of this and gone around for the last 10 minutes, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on. So if this is not something that anyone else thinks is worth pursuing any further, take it on advisement, applicant. I think this is one of those things where this is feedback. It's not something that absolutely has to happen, and certainly is not enforceable based on our code. So that's an impression. And if no one wants to add any sort of condition to the approval, we could also just motion just for a straight up approval and move on.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Semple.
Is the commission here, I mean, are we feeling like we'd like to see this at a work session just to look at some additional detail of some of these items? I'm just, because we've talked about it, you threw it out there, so I just wanted to, because that's not a condition right now. So if we're thinking about conditions.
I'm comfortable with approval without conditions, additional conditions.
I am as well.
As am I.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Semple.
I'm going to move approval of DRH 26-00016, subject to the conditions of approval, the staff report, and the conversation this evening.
Motion second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Gasarik. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Semple.
Yeah, I appreciate kind of the conversation about the stair and that raised area. I think there's, as we've kind of identified, there's a few challenges with that. I think that the applicant has heard us. You know, if there's some minor changes that they can make to that, you know, I don't think it's going to compromise the design as they've presented it so far. So I mean, I really appreciate the project. I appreciate what, you know, the use that is here too. Definitely something we need, and really just helping clean up this neighborhood a little bit more. My office used to be over in that neighborhood. It is no longer, but yeah, this will be nice to have some more sidewalks over there. It was always a challenge with not very many sidewalks. So thanks for bringing the project.
Further discussion? No, I'd echo that. It's always exciting to see an area turning around. Christina, would you please call the roll?
Simple,
Aye.
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
Gesrick,
Aye.
Aronson.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'll be
Commissioner Semple.
recusing myself from the last item.
Go on now, get. Moving to item number 4, DRH 25-00440 at 11880 West Overland Road. This is for a new multifamily development with 138 residential units in 2 buildings on property in an R3 zone. Rachel, take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Located at 11880 West Overland Road, this project is east of the Cloverdale Road intersection. The site is vacant with the exception of a single-family dwelling to be demolished and is bordered by 5 Mile Creek to the north and Reidenbach Canal to the west. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 multifamily buildings totaling 138 units for affordable housing in this configuration shown here. As stated in your project report, staff could not make the finding that the 2 buildings provided enough variability to meet the distinct building type requirements per Boise City Code. And due to the length of the building facades, the project was required to meet design guideline 4.2.2, which requires facade lengths of 120 feet or longer to provide massing relief. Based on the lack of articulation and fenestration and the inability to meet the code requirements, staff could not recommend approval. On March 5th, 2026, the applicant team submitted new drawings. The revised elevation building A shows a change in color and provides the dimensions for the widths of the articulated features. Here's the updated building elevation B, which shows new colors and new brick material added to the first floor. Planning team provided a response to the updated drawings submitted by the applicant and included them in the late correspondence memo. New colors and materials help to address the distinct building type requirements, but as stated in the memo, the facades have not been updated to address the other design changes needed. The facades lack articulation and fenestration, and the building entrances are not designed to provide enough visibility from the street. Here's a side-by-side of the 2 buildings submitted in response to staff's recommendations included in the late correspondence memo. Based on the updated drawings, the distinct building type requirement has been met, but the modulation, fenestration, and visible building entries have not. And with that, staff recommends deferral as stated in your project report, and I will stand for any questions. And if there are no questions, I can pass it on to the applicant who has prepared a presentation.
Rachel, do we have floor plans to go along with this?
Yes, I can pull them up.
Would you mind? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't have floor plans in my presentation. The applicant does not. Okay. I do have a site plan. I can pull some. It might just take me a moment or two. If you'd like, the applicant can present and maybe I can pull those up.
Could you just go to the site plan and just try and zoom in real close? Maybe a little more. Maybe even a little more. Would you go over the specific guidance within the design standards that kind of, is there anything that outlines exactly how a building should be articulated over 120 feet of parapet height or roof height? Is there like a minimum depth to the facade? Is there anything that outlines exactly how that should get broken up?
Mr. Chair, this is an example of a figure shown in 4.2.2 from the guidelines. This image shows two different examples in this section of the guideline of where you can break up and have some massing relief. I do have the section of the guideline too that does provide three different examples of how you can achieve this as well.
But there's no specific depth requirement, or is this, I see a 20 minimum
Yes,
on
so
the far right.
the depth requirement, if you were to provide that sort of break in the middle, as shown in the figure, it calls for a 30-foot minimum width and a 20-foot minimum depth.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, I think we're, nope. Commissioner Aguilar, your microphone's off.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Rachel, can you go to the submittal? Pull that up and look at and show us the site plan sheet A 1.1. And this is in the project agenda materials.
Mr.
Should
Chair,
be separate from this. It's not in your presentation. I think it has more information that I think would help the commission provide more feedback.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Aguilar, I do have some more site plans. I can pull them up. I just need to drag them onto the flash drive and
I
upload
see.
them. I apologize. I did not have those prepared this evening. I do have them. I just might take me a moment. I can pull them up.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Aguilar.
at least the plan I'm looking at, I think it would benefit the commission if we could see that on the big screen to help
I
help
agree.
provide feedback.
Looking over your shoulder, I agree. So I think that's something we should probably pull up. In the meantime, seeing no other, do you think that would generate more questions for staff, or is this something that could get moved within the further dialogue of this hearing?
I think if the commission could see it, it would help inform this group and help provide feedback that I think staff and the applicant are looking for.
Okay.
And that's, I believe that's the understanding of why we're listening to this and not just deferring it at the
Correct.
beginning of the meeting.
Correct. I believe I agree with that. Commissioner Gasserick, it looks like you'd like to say something.
Mr. Chair. I think along your lines, potentially, are you suggesting that the applicant could provide their presentation and either it might have the information or it would give our staff some more time to round up the exhibit?
That it was what, yes, generally what I was angling towards. So I think we're within our rights to move on to the applicant presentation while staff pulls that exhibit up, although I think our deliberation might have provided Rachel with enough time to do that anyway.
There we go. Thank
Sit
you.
tight.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Aguilar, I believe this is the plan that you're calling for. It's I believe the civil drawing.
Thank you. And if you could maybe zoom in to say one of the buildings.
Would you like the floor plan or from the site perspective?
On the site that shows the setback. Thank you.
Commissioner Gesrick.
To clarify, is the 20-foot setback or modulation, is that taken from, could you clarify where that is taken from? If it's from the, I guess, the leading edge of the adjacent building mass, or if it's from the setback or property line?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Gesrick, it's measured from the facade, the building facade, so it's not a setback. It's from the leading edge of the building facade.
So yeah, so one of the, along this facade that exceeds 120 feet, one of these modulations would have to step back 20 feet in order to meet the zoning requirement.
That's correct.
Or they could identify a new, like if they wanted to either separate the building or it just has to, it doesn't, they don't have to necessarily take one element of the existing building design. They could redesign it to include a recessed portion that meets the zoning requirement.
Yes, that's correct. They list 3 options in the guideline. I pulled this slide. The image shows a couple of the examples. And I did want to mention too, there is a second, the second example listed, which doesn't necessarily have to do with a depth or a break in a building, rather a use of a contrasting vertical modulated design where you could provide a completely different material. Basically, it would show that kind of a break in the massing with the material rather than the articulated element. And that's shown in number 2.
Are we ready to move on to the applicant presentation? Okay. It is now the applicant's turn to present. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Should I try the clicker? Maybe. Hi, good evening. My name is Melanie Davies.
Would you move the mic? It's finicky.
Hi there. Good evening. My name is Melanie Davies. My address is 10900 Northeast 8th Street, Suite 1200, Bellevue, Washington. Thank you for your time tonight. We're excited to be here regarding the Ascented Overland Apartments project. Could you go ahead to the next one, please? Thank you. So Chase, my colleague here, and I, we work for DevCo, which is a development and investment company focused on multifamily communities. It was founded in 1994, and we develop, own, and manage over 10,000 affordable and market rate apartments through the United States. It's headquartered in Washington State, and DevCo is the largest provider of affordable housing in Washington State. DevCo is newer to the Boise market, so just to tell you a little bit about us, we have an affordable housing project off of Franklin Road in Boise and another under construction in Caldwell, Idaho. We're looking forward to helping bring more affordable housing units to the area. Next slide, please. As Rachel stated, the site is located at 11880 West Overland Road. The property is in a R3 high density residential zone. The site is outlined in pink on this picture. It's located between Boise and Meridian. It is an ideal location for future tenants who will benefit from proximity to both cities. And both cities need affordable housing, so this project could provide a benefit to a large area. Thank you. This is sort of a reintroduction for this project. It received conditional use and PUD approval for multifamily development prior to our involvement in 2023. And we have proposed only minimal changes to the site plan from the previously approved version. One of the changes is that this project is now proposed as an affordable housing project with 139 units. It's designed with 2 sister buildings that are intentionally cohesive in color and design. So you saw this slide just a minute ago too, I think. The buildable area of this site is limited due to the shape of the site and the floodplain. There is also a requirement for the entrance to the site to be fixed in that location. One of the things that was mentioned is the potential to break up the buildings differently. And because of where the entrance is located, there really are not a lot of options for this site. The buildable area is very constrained. This version of the site plan shows the required setbacks and illustrates how the area available for the buildings themselves is sort of pinched down to a narrow corridor across the frontage. Next slide, please. Technical difficulties on my part. Hold on just a moment, please. So as I mentioned, the revised site plan has been reviewed and approved, and a modification to the conditional use permit has been approved, and a floodplain permit has been approved for this project. When we became involved with this site, we wanted to be thoughtful in addressing neighborhood concerns from the previous approval process. So we focused on making changes that would both suit an affordable housing project and address some of those concerns. For example, when the project was initially approved, neighbors were concerned about the northern property boundary, parking, and balconies. So we have proposed a type B landscape buffer, which includes 23 trees with an open split rail fence along the northern property boundary. The intent of a split rail fence in that location is to have minimal impact to wildlife and the nearby floodplain. And the trees are spaced so that at maturity, 60% or more of the vertical surface will prevent the passage of vision. While our project is allowed to request a parking count reduction, we have not requested one, both due to neighbor concerns about parking overflow and because we would like to ensure that there is sufficient parking for our tenants. We also removed unit balconies to address neighbor privacy concerns. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, we are proposing to change this project from market rate units to 100% affordable, deed restricted units for 30 to 50 years, leasing to tenants in the 60% AMI range. Unit types and mix are more suited to an affordable apartment now, with 81 bedroom units, 52 bedrooms, and 4 3-bedroom units. The previous version of the project, I believe, had studio apartments as well. We also are proposing to change the building style from modern flat roofs to a more traditional pitched roof to complement the surrounding area, with also minor changes to materials, siding, masonry, windows, roofing, and then again, the balconies have been removed. We also made minor changes to the parking lot and drive aisles to improve access for tenants for solid waste and emergency services. As I mentioned before, the site meets vehicle parking and bicycle parking requirements, which addresses public concerns and also will provide adequate parking for our tenants. The planned amenity areas consist of passive recreation, a tot lot, playground area, a clubhouse and fitness area will be located within the western building. There will also be an improvement to the pedestrian network, including construction of a 10-foot wide multi-use pathway along West Overland Road, which will replace the existing 7-foot wide attached sidewalk. And there is an existing bike lane that will remain. All of the landscaped areas are designed to enhance the natural environment, with particular emphasis on protection of the 5 Mile Creek riparian zone, and include locating landscaping improvements to enhance screening and address privacy concerns. Next slide, please. We did receive some agency comments, comments from solid waste, street lighting, drainage, sewer, and the Boise Police Department. There weren't any issues presented that were of concern. We did receive feedback on the trash enclosure locations. They said the layout was acceptable and provided feedback on dumpster sizing, service schedule, and enclosure gates. There are going to be 4 30-foot roadway poles with 15-foot mast arms and Class B fixtures required on Overland Road. A meter cabinet and an easement will be required as well. The Department of Forestry noted that there are existing trees to be removed. However, there will be new trees planted to mitigate and provide landscape buffer and screening. Boise Police Department requested access to all controlled entry multi-housing complexes through a lockbox or keypad or similar secure method. And then it was noted that the project is required to connect to sewer and submit a stormwater management plan to be approved by Public Works prior to issuance of a grading permit or a building permit. Next slide, please. So this is a slightly larger comparison of the previous site plan that was approved and our current site plan. It's pretty small, but it does show that the required parking count is 167 stalls, and we are providing that. It doesn't show the bike parking, but I think I have another slide that'll show bike parking. We do meet the bike parking requirements also. Next slide, please. This slide is to show the building design change from a flat roof modern style, which was proposed previously, to a pitch roof traditional design. Again, it shows the removal of the unit balconies to address the neighborhood privacy concerns, and then also just mentions material changes as well as from the initially approved version of the building. Overall, the building footprints are very similar due to the site constraints, but the overall look of the buildings is a little bit different. Colors are different. Next slide, please. So items that we wanted to talk about that are design review elements. The building meets the requirements for distinction in BCC section 1103.03.2a, utilizing color and siding changes, and masonry is on one building as well. The building street facing facades are designed to avoid undifferentiated wall planes and are divided into a series of smaller horizontal and vertical components to comply with city standards for building facade articulation. Street facing building entrances for each building are located so that they are highly visible from the street and site entrance. There will also be an entrance monument for the project and additional signage directing pedestrian traffic towards these entrances from Overland Road. The site is located in the floodplain and it will be raised approximately 3 feet. As proposed, the buildings will not exceed the 50-foot limitation at the highest point of the roof per the approved height exception. Mechanical equipment will be screened from the property line, right of way, and open spaces to the extent feasible. And in addition, most mechanical equipment is designed to be located inside the buildings. Thank you. The proposed project is an affordable housing project, and as such, we're mindful of cost-efficient materials and choices. However, we will also own and operate the apartments after construction, so quality materials offering longevity, reasonable maintenance is also factored into our design and material choices. This slide shows a rendering of the buildings and the site. I think it shows a pretty good job of showing how long and narrow the parcel is and how we have tried to differentiate the materials and colors along the building facades. This next slide, let's see, that one, yes. It's kind of dark where the building entrance is actually shown. I was trying to show the entrance from the side from the street that, we were required to have. It's kind of a dark slide, but there is a covered entrance at the end of each building visible from the street, and it has a covered roof and 2 pillars, and it will be evident that there is an entrance to the building from the side on both of the buildings. Thank you. We'd submitted updated elevations and requested a departure in late communications. The elevations shown in this project, or I'm sorry, in this presentation, reflect additional changes that we made as we were refining this presentation and working on a rendering for this presentation. We would like the staff and board to consider an approval rather than a deferral based on these new materials, if that is at all a possibility. As noted on this slide, the site has several constraints that reduce buildable area and make it so we are unable to fully meet design guideline 4.2.2 maximum facade widths. The combination of the shape and size, the fixed entrance, the setbacks from Overland Road, the increase from a 7-foot to a 10-foot sidewalk, and its location in this floodplain, which also comes with its own setbacks. All of those things reduce the buildable area to the point where it's not really possible to design buildings with maximum facade articulation while also meeting the parking, safety, and solid waste requirements. The fixed entrance itself presents the ability to break the buildings into smaller buildings, which in other circumstances might have been a good option for this site. We feel strongly that our design now meets the intent of the design guideline by changing building materials and colors along the facade in smaller sections than required, and by providing sections of 18-inch vertical building modulation. Next slide, please. Let's see. Other factors to consider in relation to our design and our departure request. We believe that the proposed building and site design meet the intent of the design guidelines, providing visual interest, distinction between buildings and pedestrian movement. The balconies were removed from the building design to address neighborhood comments. We are fine with not having balconies on the buildings. We think that that's acceptable for tenants, but it's something that we could consider changing if that would be important, is seen as important to changing the facade of the buildings. Let's see. One of the things we wanted to point out is that changes to building design to increase the facade articulation are not really feasible without a dramatic reduction of the number of parking stalls. And the site is allowed a 25 to 50% parking reduction. I'm not sure of the exact number. We have not requested it due to neighborhood concerns about overflow parking and our desire to provide sufficient parking for our tenants. The building materials have been selected for quality and longevity. There is not a single wall section that is 120 feet in length without change. And I do have some slides that show the lengths of the wall sections and where the changes occur following this slide. The roofline peak is broken up by the building modulation also. And again, this project will provide 100% affordable housing. I think this next slide shows some of the color changes that we made. This is building A on the, is it building A? Yeah. Sorry, it shows color changes that we've made. We have entire sections of the building that are now one color from, ground floor up to the roof facade. We have the Hardie siding, and then we have Hardie panels. And I think so as far as the building design, we do have a change in our siding style. We do have modulation in our buildings. The modulation is 18 inches, and I think the minimum requirement for the facade, the facade code is 12 inches. And then we do also have changes in color to differentiate the buildings. The next slide has a little bit more detail as far as the distances between color changes. So that goes back to where I said there is not a single 120-foot long section that is all the same. And that is just a side view. And then the next slide is showing some of our materials. We're planning to use fiber cement Hardie siding and some different colors there, and then some panel as well as the typical siding. The buildings will have vinyl windows and The gutters and downspouts will be black, so it'll have a lot of different colors throughout the buildings to break them up. The next, the next one is the other building on the site. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my place. This building, I can't tell which building it is compared to which building I'm on. Sorry about that. One of the buildings has stone on the facade for the first floor. It's only the one building that has the stone on it. I think it's this one, the south building. And what we're planning here is similar colors, but there are differences. And then I think we're proposing a thin stone Eldorado Coriac Ridge stone. You can go to the next slide, or depending on if, I don't know that we need to look at all of them because we've already kind of covered them. So if you could just go down to our last slide requesting approval. Thank you. As mentioned previously, we submitted the updated elevations and requested a departure in late communication, and the elevations shown in this presentation reflect additional changes that we made as we worked through the process of getting to this presentation. We are asking the staff and board to consider an approval rather than a deferral, and for the board to feel free to ask any questions they may have tonight. We would like to avoid a deferred decision and a second design review hearing because this is an affordable housing project and we're trying not to have any delay in our process as we work through to get financing. If the decision is deferred, we would like to request to be allowed to provide additional information requested at the hearing instead of an additional public works session to follow that hearing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, we will move on to the public testimony portion. We have two names on the sign-in sheet, and then once we've gone through those, we will check the room to see if there's anyone else, and then check online to see if there's anyone else. First, we have Wendy Dahl. Daly? Dale? Dally. All right. Wendy, if you could please give us your name and address.
My name is Wendy Daly. I live at 11949 West Armgood Drive in Boise, Idaho, directly across this development. And I guess the concerns, I know they said they've had meetings. I've followed this from the change in zoning to planning and zoning to design to the city and all these things. And unfortunately, you know, and being a resident of 30 years there, I feel like our voices, our neighborhood concerns have really never been addressed. Even though they make it sound like they have been, they haven't been addressed in many ways. And the concern is if you look at the site plan, it's all single housing around this area. There's no 4-level high-rise apartments within miles of our neighborhood. And so to me, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. I mean, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. It doesn't fit into our neighborhood. It creates all sorts of issues of social issues and lack of green space that pushes them into our neighborhoods, those single family housing developments into our neighbors. I've seen it with the fourplexes that sit in front of us, even though they're single level. You know, we get the dog walking with all the dog increments that we have to clean up thousands of dollars to our cost. You know, or we have a park in Pepper Hills, and so we get that volume and this the social issues that come with that and the effects that it has on the maintenance and the cleanup of our subdivision. So to put this huge high-rise multiplex and, like they say, low housing, to try to make it seem like it's better than what it really is to the homeowners. And I've been asked to speak for our HOA. I was asked to do that since I've been on the board. Is that it really a lot of concerns have not been addressed, and the density and they say that the trees, but we know, and they can say that it does shield, but it doesn't shield. You know, those single family homes along that bank are going to be impeded with their privacy. And it's just not fair to longtime neighborhoods that have been there for 30, 50 years. the egress, and I know you don't have anything to do with that, but they've asked for a variance. So there's one entrance and exit right across from our entrance into Pepper Hills, which will just be a suicide lane across into that school zone and park that sits in our HOA. So it not only does it create a big safety issue, it just has myriads of problems. They brought this up saying it would be mixed use, that there would be residential, that there would be other things inside this building, and there is nothing of the sort in these buildings that help keep those residents inside that development. They're all going to be looking for outside. And besides the fact that there's not still, even though they say they added parking, we know realistically there isn't, because we saw it in our neighborhood with the fourplexes. They come out and park in front of our homes. And so I know that this is a design, but I think you have a lot of leeway to really look at that. And if they really did address all the citizens review, this complex would not look like it is right now. There would be more separation, and there would be a bigger thing to help the residents there, not just to impede and affect us so drastically.
Thank you,
I
Wendy.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Dwayne, would you like to speak?
My name's Dwayne Dowley, 11949 West Armpit Drive, Boise, Idaho. You know, I don't have a lot more to say other than what Wendy said, other than, you know, when it just goes through and we look where we are, we're a few blocks inside the city limits. You go a couple blocks down Overland and you're in Meridian. We're almost the furthest southwest you get from downtown Boise. And we have an area that's zoned high density. I just scratch my head. I don't understand. 4 stories on the border out in residential areas. I just don't get that. And the high density does not contribute to the beauty of that area. I think the plan, the work, what the designers have done and what they've tried to work with this area is remarkable, that they could really try to get those 2 properties in there. And it may be beautiful material and everything else, but it doesn't fit. You've got to look at a development. When a piece of property comes into an existing area, it should bring something that contributes to the area. I don't know what this contributes, what it brings to the area. It takes resources. It brings more traffic, everything else, like my wife said. I'm really searching to see what it will bring to the area to enhance the area itself. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online? Seeing none, we'll close the public testimony portion, and the applicant is allowed a 5-minute rebuttal if they would like it. So we will move to discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Aguilar.
I think this needs to be deferred. I don't see any reason to approve a departure on this. I totally appreciate the fact that it's affordable housing, something we very much need. But I think it could be better. I'm really struggling with the modulation, and I totally understand and respect the fact that it's a tight site and the buildable area is limited. But I think it'd be a disservice to approve this project in its current form.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gasserick.
To provide clarification for the applicant, could you bring up the zoning material that was referenced for the, I guess the grounds for the deferral? Yeah, that slide that you had up, that had the it had the like the roof plan of the, yeah, exactly. Okay. And I believe the applicant referenced a couple of times that they were meeting that modulation and setback. I believe, I don't believe, I agree with Commissioner Aguilar. I don't believe the current design is meeting the intent of that modulation. I see where there's not 120 feet of continuous material, but I think what this is trying to illustrate is that you can still have the facade can step, but if it doesn't have a relief of 20 foot or greater over that 120 foot span, it doesn't really count towards that building modulation, or at least that's my understanding of it. And so I think that might be some I guess some of the misunderstanding. Would it be acceptable to have the planning and zoning staff confirm that my understanding is correct?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Gesrick, the what you're speaking to is design guideline 4.2.2 and how the project is not meeting this design guideline. Is that correct? If that's what you're asking?
Correct. Yeah. I just there were a few moments within the applicant's presentation where they were referencing no material exceeding 120 feet, and I don't feel that's the intent of this section. I feel the intent of this section is more looking at modulation and the depth of that modulation, not necessarily continuous materiality.
That's correct. This section directly speaks to massing relief.
Thank you for clarifying. And yeah, based on that, I agree with Commissioner Aguilar's assessment. I would also agree that a deferral is necessary because it's not meeting the modulation requirements.
Appreciate the feedback. I think that there's a couple things at play here. There's certainly an appreciation for how narrow this site is and the effort to squeeze as much program on and as much parking on and as much of everything on as possible. It's a weirdly shaped site that always makes it harder to work with. I think the verbiage within the design standard is not necessarily actionable within this context without going to a wildly more expensive building type, like maybe a tuck under parking and moving sections of this building away from the overland frontage and closer to the neighborhood, and introducing a whole bunch of steel and, keeping the parking counts as they are, or going back for a reduction, which I think the applicant doesn't want. I don't think the neighbors want to go to a parking reduction. So I'd love to get to a point where we can make some design moves here that are they create the perception of compliance, and what they end up doing is breaking up this facade in a meaningful way. And what has ended up happening is, I think, a little bit of an overcorrection and say, okay, well, let's break this up a ton, and the perception will be that it's not as big as it is. I think what has the execution, though, is kind of the crux of the matter. And we've got a couple of different articulation points, but the fact that we have this sort of solid datum across the bottom of both of these buildings, it actually counters the articulation efforts. So we just see this long strip under each of them that reinforces this idea of a linear building and a linear facade that doesn't have any breaks in it. I think the direction that I would give, I don't want to make affordable housing less affordable. I would love to keep these footprints essentially as they are, and all of the functionality that comes with that. But I think that if we get to the actual floor plans themselves, we'll see, you know, there's a couple of these 18-inch protrusions. Some of them are 2 room modules wide, some of them are 1 room module wide. And then we have this kind of facsimile of a protrusion across the rest of the facade where, you know, every 12.5 feet, we change the color of the material and call it a day. I think that that's not taking it far enough, while also taking it too far and going back to this kind of Harlequin checkerboard pattern that we start to see on these facades. So, you know, the direction that I would give for the next time around would be, I'd like to see these bump outs in the facade increase in number, have a little bit more of a intentional rhythm to them, and I'd like to see a continuous vertical materiality on those so that each of those kind of miniature house movements takes on a sort of character of its own. And then behind it would be the contrasting facade materiality. And by doing that, now you get, you know, 25-foot chunks of building, and they start to speak more as self-contained. But this idea of having a long strip of the same color really is self-defeating in this whole kind of effort. If anything, I think, you know, if we were to go back to those renderings, the kind of the aerial rendering that shows both of the buildings, if that's possible. It might not be in this presentation. It might be in the applicant presentation. There we go. So maybe what I would say would be condense some of these vertical bump ups into, you know, on this right-hand side, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 6 of these projections. Give them a little more size, a little more scale, more like the actual gable roof projections that you see, the 2 of them, and then take that materiality. You know, I like the idea of integrating a cultured stone or a masonry base. I think it is, again, it's self-defeating when you end it right at the floor level. If you could take that up to the bottom sill of the level 2 windows, and then align those VTAC louvers, so you got a nice datum within that smaller unit. And then on either side of it, you have the whole 4-story contrast that, again, gets broken up 25, 47 feet later, whatever, with another sort of rhythmic protrusion with the gable roof. And it's almost, I think you'll get more mileage out of this by kind of reducing the number of things that you're trying to do, but just commit to each of them a little bit further. I don't know that deferral is necessarily the path I would take in that regard. I think there's a lot about this that I see as workable. I think there's a lot of refinement that needs to be done to get to the point where we say this is acceptable. I agree, you know, there's a lot of factors at play when we're talking about subsidized affordable housing, and timelines are certainly critical. I don't want to allow substandard buildings into our community, which will be there for decades to come, just to hit a specific timeline. But I think there's, I don't know. I hope that we've given enough feedback that's workable, that is actionable, that, you know, at the next design review hearing, which would not need to be noticed, and which would be, we could get an approval out of at that point. without moving to a work session. But I would say that, at a deferred hearing, the same things that we'd like to see at a work session would be pertinent and important to bring out. Let's see the materiality, let's see the things that you want to put on this facade, and let's, pass them around, let's touch them and make sure that we feel comfortable with that.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gesserick.
I don't know that, I mean, I think the intent, what we were speaking to in the massing and the density of this project and the intent of the zoning code, I think it goes a little bit further than, I guess, just the facade articulation. I think it goes back to, it's more of an issue with density. And I think you could take the same project and simply break it up into more buildings, essentially. If you had and say if you took this building on the right and split that up into 2 buildings with access through the center, I think that would achieve the modulation that they're trying to get at in the zoning code. And so I wonder if, personally, I mean, I don't know that adjusting even the depth of the facade articulation would address my concerns. I think it's more just the fact that there's a really long continuous facade as referenced in the public testimony. It's in an area where you have a lot of single family homes, and just the scale of, I don't know how long that continuous building form is, but it's significantly longer than what you're seeing in the surrounding area. And so that's some of my concern. I don't know if Commissioner Aguilar, when you were I guess voicing some of your concerns, if it was more on that basis, or if it was more on the modulation that's shown in the current concept.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Aguilar.
I would say all the above. And I think this requires enough work and changes that I don't feel comfortable just sending it to a work session.
I think, and I understand what you're saying, that, there's certainly site plan and building plan adjustments that could be made. I think the intent of minimizing impact on the neighborhood by pulling these buildings as far away from the neighborhood as possible is kind of one of these trade-offs, right? I'm sure that we could get to a similar density, which, by the way, is not something that we can opine on here, right? The density is prescribed in the zoning code. The massing is prescribed in the zoning code. The parking is prescribed in the zoning code. We don't have the purview to discuss or direct in that regard. I think this then becomes more of a trade-off for the neighborhood. Would you rather have a 4-story building running perpendicular to Overland that then is within the allowed setbacks, but is about 100 feet closer to the homes? Or would you rather have a large kind of monolithic building that crosses the entire southern property line? And I'm agnostic on it. I think I'd rather have a bigger building closer to me that does not block the entire southern property line, but my opinion is not the same as everyone else's. I think what we're trying to do is figure out a way for this applicant to get to their allowed zoning density and allowed zoning height, and at the same time build 136 affordable housing units that we desperately need. I will say, I think the split rail fence is probably not the move that I would make on the northern property boundary. I'd probably go with a 6 foot cedar or similar fence that provides a little less transparency across the property line and gets back to addressing some of these privacy concerns. I don't know if there was any staff direction in that regard or if it was just an applicant decision. I guess if we don't feel comfortable with the building arrangements as they are, that's direction that we need to provide. Whether it's break up your buildings so that this isn't an issue, and we will not provide a departure based on the footprints and facades as they are, then that's, I think, something that needs to be stated within the motion to defer. As has been said, we can't design these buildings for the applicant, but we can certainly tell them what we're looking for.
Mr. Chair, I'd agree with that. And also what you're talking about before with the volumes and just making these look like actual volumes that are separate pieces instead of as it reads now, which is kind of one long thing. I feel like there are ways to do that given the layout of this building as it is without making massive changes to it. And maybe even without breaking up the buildings themselves, but an 18-inch step back does not seem like enough. And maybe those could get pulled out farther than 18 inches. And along with your recommendation to kind of have less volumes per building and have each one read a little bit more significantly. I also think that could be done with material choices. Based on my understanding of the renderings, it kind of looked like it was all lap siding all the way down, and with differentiation in color. I think that maybe going from lap siding in one volume, or like the recessed areas are lap siding, and the volumes up front are smooth, hardy plankers, whatever it is. Doesn't have to be, I don't know what it is, but just a way to differentiate them more.
I'd agree with that also. I think being considerate that this is affordable housing, we can't say, switch from, make the departure be huge, switch from fiber cement to metal siding or something like that. I think simply, like as you mentioned, it could be board batten, could be lap siding, could be like a smooth panelized system, but just some kind of textural change. I think that would help. I don't know. I do still come back to the intent of the zoning code, and it's for this specifically. And I don't agree with, I understand trying to provide as many affordable housing units as possible, but I don't agree that the site constraints are limiting the ability to do that. I think that you could break these buildings up into smaller buildings, and it would help with the sense of scale in the surrounding context. And I believe that's the intent of the zoning code. I guess I would echo the feedback that you're both sharing. In addition to that, I think the project would be more successful with the feedback and critique that you provided.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Gesrick,
I would move to defer project DRH 25-00440 for the grounds noted in the staff report related to the building massing and building modulation.
Second.
a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Christine, would you call the roll?
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
Gesrick,
Aye.
Aronson,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
That concludes our items for the evening. We'll see you all next month. Sorry, this is a major faux pas and probably breaks a lot of rules, but we didn't do a date specific deferral on this item. I think that's that for can I reopen this public hearing? Is that the proper movement? I sort of kind of tried to without saying that word specifically. I did not explicitly say adjourned.
So there's a motion in a second to a date uncertain, so that should be noticed. That's the only difference.
Mr. Chair.
It's already been voted. Motion second.
I would say that the date is recommended in the staff report to defer to April 8th.
You can clean it up with a substitute motion, so just that hasn't been adjourned, you can say like a superseding motion to refer to dates or
For the sake of cleaning this up, and having not said the A word yet, I think we need to entertain a superseding motion that would date specific defer that item based upon the suggested April 8th date. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Should I restate the entire motion? Or yeah,
I think it just I would like a date specific deferral of this item.
I would move to defer this item to the April 8th design review agenda.
Does that check our box?
So just to clarify, the motion is a superseding motion to defer this item to the April 8th, 2026 meeting.
Right. I believe that is correct.
Okay, I think that's clear, so we can go with that. And if you got a second, we can go.
Second.
A motion of seconds for the deferral of item DRH 25-00440 to the April 8th public hearing. Christina, would you please call the roll?
Aguilar,
Aye.
Erstad,
Aye.
Gesrick.
Aye.
Aronson,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Now we are adjourned.